I appreciate resources which help make my work with adult students more effective. That's exactly what my membership with CALE provides. Thank you, CALE, for the outstanding tools, research, support, and connection to so many amazing colleagues who are all dedicated to helping adults reach their goal of a post-secondary degree. Happy birthday, CALE.
Well, good morning. Good morning. So glad to see everyone here. It's so exciting to really be thinking about not only is this our biggest conference we've ever had, but it's been such a wonderful week full of so many wonderful sessions, getting to know everyone, and also celebrating our 50th anniversary. I'm Christine Carpenter. I'm the Chief of Staff for CALE, and I just am so thankful that all of you are a part of this. It's been a very special week. So, it is so exciting to really think about our final keynote presentation. We've been in the background kind of planning this for months, and so it's a real good reminder that I want to give a reminder that directly following this session, please stay because we have some prizes to give out. But I want to say that moderating this critical panel between the connection of workforce and higher education is Dr. Mark Milliron, and he's the president of National University. He's also an amazing award winner of an author and a speaker and a fabulous president. So I want to have a round of applause in helping Mark come to the stage and lead this discussion this morning.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, hello. I am thrilled to be here. I have been coming to CALE conferences for over 30 years, and it's been fun. And I think it's amazing to watch, and with Christine and I were just talking about this, these movements that go from novel to normal, right? I still remember when the internet first became a thing, and we were trying to help faculty and staff realize they were going to be okay. We did a lot of group counseling around that, and now again, the internet's totally normal. Same kind of thing's probably going to happen with AI and other kinds of tools. But this conversation absolutely matters, in particular, the conversation around non-traditional working and military students. And it's fascinating because I feel like we're coming into our moment. We're coming into a moment where we can radically make things better for millions and millions of students. Let me just give you an idea. I'm going to give you 3 examples and talk about the way in which we're going to dialogue around this with the panel. So I come from a family of 9 kids. A number of you might know my backstory. It's a kind of a crazy, fun backstory for my family. Julia and I have 4 kids, which my mom calls a starter family, which is kind of great. Whole other thing. I still remember going to our first parent-teacher conference when Alexandra, my oldest daughter, was in kindergarten. You remember those conferences? Those kindergarten conferences? And you always do them in the classroom of your kid, which is always fun because you get to go into the classroom and you see all the art up there on the walls and all this and that. And then comes the moment where you have to sit down with a teacher and have a conversation. And they bring you over to a little area. I still remember they brought us over to this little area, and the chairs are this high, right? And she's like, sit down, let's begin a conversation. Her chair is normal. Our chair is this high. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be interesting. And so I try to get down to the chair, and I kid you not, in a moment that'll live in our family's history, because Julia tells the story every time she can tell it, I tried to bend down, and somehow my quadricep freaked out, and I did a full 360 backward roll, knocked over a bunch of chairs everywhere. I really had a moment, right, around that, because it's not a normal chair height. Right. Okay, second example. 4 kids, all of them played sports, everything from baseball to basketball. Driving my daughter's summer AAU basketball team around. They're a rowdy group. We're in a big suburban. There's at least 8 of the girls in there. They're singing to every song that's on the radio as loud as they can. Have you ever had these experiences with your kid in the car? And they're singing and they're talking and they're laughing and we're going from places to eat. And somewhere in the conversation, I think I'm going to be the cool dad and enter the dialogue. And so as they're talking about this and that, I make a comment about something. And I'm not kidding. What used to be this loud, raucous car, dead silent. And everyone's just staring at me, and I kind of look back, and my daughter's looking at me like, "Oh, Dad, you made a horrible choice. Like, this is not for you." And I just turned around, and at that moment, I talked to my daughter later. Just the realization in that environment, you're just the chauffeur, right? You're just the chauffeur, and it's okay to think about that. Third example, I'm doing work with Osaka Gakuen University in Japan, helping them think about what they're going to do with adult learners, actually. That was part of the conversation. And their wonderful guy, Toshio Tsutsui, who is my tour guide and connector to the university, after a whole set of really interesting meetings that we can unpack later if you ever want to talk about it, he decided to take me on a tour of the larger university. And in addition to that, they run a K-12 school. So he's touring me around the university. And by the way, as I landed in Japan and I got off the plane and I got to the hotel, I just kind of noticed everywhere I went, being a 6'4", 240-pound guy walking around in Japan, you kind of get looked at a lot, right? Because you kind of stand out. And then I decided to go on a train and do some sightseeing, and everywhere I went, the average person's like this high, and I'm standing out, and people are staring at me and kind of talking to each other and looking at me, and I'm already feeling kind of like an outsider. So by the time I get through all these meetings at OGU and they just taking me on this tour, we're walking around, I notice there are bands of kids running just beside us, running from building to building, hiding and pointing at me. And I'm with 4 or 5 people, and we're all kind of noticing it, but kind of joking, and they're saying something. I can't really hear what they're saying, but they're all pointing and saying something. And as we keep walking around, the crowd is getting larger and larger, and there's this whole crowd of 30 kids that are all pointing and pointing. And we finally get into the K-12 section, and I can start to hear them, and they're saying the expression over and over again, "Oki gaijin," as they're pointing at me. And I'm like, finally we get back to the thing. I'm like, "Toshio, what in the world?" I go, "What does Oki gaijin mean?" And he goes, "It means enormous foreigner." I'm like, wow. Okay, just to get real, a lot of our students, non-traditional working and military students, either have a desperate fear or they have a real example of trying to access traditional education, and what do they feel like? They feel like an enormous foreigner, and either they've had that experience or they're terrified they're gonna have that experience. So at National University, we were founded by a Navy captain, PhD, Dr. David Chigos, who in the early 1970s was heartbroken watching GI Bill recipients coming out of Vietnam who were trying to access traditional education. And being deployed, being parents, and having to work full time, the model didn't work. And they just constantly, it wasn't, again, I don't want to beat up traditional education. For the people who access it and want that model, God bless them, they should use it. But for the students that he cared about, it didn't work. And so he and a group of former officers went to WASC, the accreditor, and said, can we create a university that is totally focused on this population? And by that, we're going to design for it, which means we're going to do things like 4-week courses. We're going to use technology. We're going to have innovative learning strategies. That was our founding. And fast forward 50 years, we're serving 50,000 students, doctoral, master's, and bachelor's degrees, 80,000 in workforce development. But the whole model was, and we're almost 100% non-traditional working and military students. We were designed for that purpose. And even though we are known, the 53-year history of doing that kind of work, our average age of our bachelor's degree is 33, average age of our master's is 37, average age of our doctoral programs is 42. We still have brand new students who know about National, have heard of National, and they're still terrified they're going to go into their first class and they're going to be an outsider. And the minute they look around and see people like them, you could just see them just relax because they feel like they're home. This is a conversation where it's important that folks here at Cale, who are going to be a part of institutional leadership, nonprofit leadership, corporate leadership, policymakers, we have got to catalyze the conversation and make things better, because we have to create an environment where more and more of our students who come from these diverse backgrounds feel like they belong. They feel like they're home. They feel like it's a place for them. By the way, I want to make sure this is not a better than traditional. I actually believe deeply that if you're an 18-year-old and want an on-campus experience, for the love of God, don't come to National. There are other great places you can go. But if later in life you want to work and advance and stay working while you're getting your master's or doctorate, that's us. That's the kind of work we do. I think our country is better with a family of models so that more and more diverse people can be more successful. Are you with me on that? Yeah. So this is not about we're better, they're worse. This is about we're better with a family of models, but especially a family of models that make these students feel like, oh yeah, this is for me, this is what I want to be a part of. So to help me engage this conversation, we're going to have a group of panelists that are going to come up and be a part of this larger dialogue. That includes Chris Graham, who's our Executive Vice President of Workforce and Community Education at National University. Okay. Kate Smith, who is the president at Rio Salado Community College. Give her a round of applause. And Todd McKean, who is the director of environment and supply chain with the little company that you might know called Apple. Let's give him a big round of applause. So Kate, I'm going to jump in with you because Rio Salado has a very similar story to Nationals. In fact, I was a doctoral intern with Paul Elsner, the former chancellor, way back in the day, and he showed me the pictures. His idea for Rio Salado, he had tried for years to get the larger district, which is far more traditional, to adopt more non-traditional ways to meet non-traditional working and military students. And he finally got frustrated and said, we have to build this for purpose. And he started Rio Salado College as a college without walls. This is way before the internet. And the whole idea was this college will be nothing but models for non-traditional working and military students. By the way, he was hung in effigy by the faculty and staff. They were so angry about this, they almost totally shut down the district. They were furious about this thing. Fast forward to today, Rio Salado, for the last 20 years, has been the fastest growing part of the Maricopa Community College, is now the largest Maricopa Community College. Talk a bit about that, that difference between trying to add on as opposed to being built for purpose for this, because that's been your secret sauce for a long time. And everybody comes to visit Rio, but you're never worried about it because it's hard to really do this in a non-traditional. Talk about it a bit.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. And so good morning, almost good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. I just want to first say thank you for the commitment you all make every day, the difference you make in millions of lives. So just thank you for the work you do. Okay, back to Rio Salado College. So as Mark shared, we were founded in 19...
We're trying to get your mic going. Is your mic on?
I thought I put it on.
Yeah.
Let me try it. Does that one?
There it is. That's what it was.
Oh, look, I turned it off.
It's on here.
So every other conversation I've had, you all could hear. Maybe you already heard this. Mark and I were just talking about this. Sorry about that. That's really funny. And I can match the kindergarten story. But anyway, back to Rio Salado was founded in 1978 as a college without walls. And so that concept of we are going to take education to people that cannot access it through traditional means. So again, as Mark shared, not about better or worse, but there are barriers that keep people out of traditional higher education, and so we need models that work for them. And so we were joking about all the headlines back in the day that was it's not real learning, it should be shut down, and there was a whole lot of negative animosity.
And that wasn't from the public or the corporate side. It was from the own faculty internally.
Yeah, it was from within. So there's 10 colleges in the Maricopa Community College District, and they all did not want to have a Rio Salado College exist. So what that did for us, it's in our fabric of our DNA to think about and constantly challenge ourselves to this day, what is keeping students today out of post-secondary education? What is needed? Our name is the Salt River, right? The Salt River goes around barriers and cuts through the objects that get in the way, right? And so to this day, that is what we're constantly doing and constantly charged with, which is a lot of the work that's happening here.
Exactly right. Yeah. And Chris, just to bring you in on this, National University's history has clearly been focused on, again, trying to be innovative in this way. And part of your work is to actually work across all 6 of the colleges and build those bridges between the employers, and you've got big employers like thousands of school districts, but then you've got big employers like Apple, you've got big employers like defense contractors and others. Talk a bit about that because you have to do that articulation work to make sure that they understand that we're different, like we're going to provide that workforce-friendly kind of conversation.
Sure, absolutely. And so the way our group's organized, we're by verticals. So we align ourselves business and technology, public safety, community colleges, K through 12, healthcare, and military and veteran. And then within that, we have teams who go out and work with the industry on anything from employee development, workforce development, stackable learning, customized educations, pathways to degrees, and helping to work with them on what are the skills needed for their employees we're working out into the future. And then we cut across horizontally across our 6 schools and colleges to work with the faculty on prior learning assessments, on building out, on aligning with the industry so that we can make sure we're matching up with what the workforce is looking for.
No, I love it. Todd, and this is where it gets interesting because with employers like Apple, you really have multiple segments. You're working with education because you're thinking about your own rising workforce, but you're also thinking about the workforce of the people you're providing software and hardware for. You want to make sure they've got the people who can do this. Talk about that idea of like you've got to work with traditional and non-traditional.
Yeah. So at Apple, we're a large organization. We have different teams that are doing different things related to education. As my title alludes, I'm focused on our supply chain. So we have a manufacturing footprint around the world in kind of every corner of the world, really. At any given time, certainly as we're ramping our peak manufacturing, we could have several million people working in the supply chain. And so one of the commitments we're making as a company is not only that there's good employment that's offered in those jobs, but how can we provide more opportunity for people who want to grow and develop in their career at the supplier. So what's unique about the work that we're doing is my team is really specifically focused on working with the supplier to help their employees go further. So we focus on sort of 3 key areas. Technical, which could be things like a coding program, Swift coding, other types of coding, automation. Of course, there's more and more manufacturing going to automated processes. Professional, so leadership training, that operator who is working on a line but would like to maybe become a line supervisor or a manager. And then also some focus on health and wellness because, of course, there's many people there. We, of course, found that particularly during COVID, the programming that we had focused on, personal health and wellness was really critical to meet the needs of people in the supply chain and be able to offer those opportunities that they may not have had otherwise.
So one of the things you're trying to do is curate the family of options that are available and make sure you're connecting internally and externally people to the right resource at the right time.
That's right.
Yeah. Chris, in some ways, that's like the design principle that you're trying to work with. And one of the things that National we've leaned into is this idea of credential-rich education. We want connection-rich education where they're connecting with students and faculty and professionals, and experience-rich, but that credential-rich is a really big deal because that creates on-ramps and off-ramps, but it also creates tentacles and connections right into the industry. Talk a bit about that.
Absolutely, sure. And so with the on-ramps and off-ramps into the university, what we try to do is we try to find different options for students to enter into the workforce to get the skills that they need in order to align their jobs, and then eventually have the opportunity to stack those back into the degree later on. And so an example of that is like a construction management program. So what we do is we unbundle our programs in many cases. It's often a very kind of efficient way to get training out there into the market. So we carve out 100 hours from our Bachelor's of Construction Management program, stand that up. The students can take that training, they can sit for the exam, they can get out onto the site, and then they can work, and then when they're ready to move up to supervisor, they can roll that training back into the Bachelor's of Construction Management. They're already on their way towards a degree.
So they get that construction management cert, and then they can work make more money, and then they can get their bachelor's.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, very, very similar. We have a program called, it's focused on developing automation technician skills. So we have factories that maybe have several thousand, maybe even 10,000 CNC machines. And while you need a handful of master technicians who kind of know how to do everything with that equipment, you need dozens of junior technicians. But you want to be able to not only provide the skill for that person who maybe is just coming into the factory or has been doing another job to get a leg up to advance and go further, to be able to get that basic skill, but then you also want to have a path. So we work with the supplier to help them map out sort of what does career progression look like in that area, so that, much like you're saying, you can get that first certificate to be a junior technician. You do that job for a while, you gain some expertise, you have an opportunity to take a couple of other modules that you then go to that next level, and then you find that there's just a certain number that have the sort of expertise and ability to get to that very master level, but there's many, many people who are able to go from that sort of junior level and work their way up closer to that master level, which gives them consistent growth and development and, you know, sort of commitment to that job.
Okay.
So I love that. I think we all are aware of how rapidly the workforce is changing, right? And how rapidly it's going to continue to change, right? Look at World Economic Forum. We talked about this the other day. You know, they're saying within 5 years, 50% of all workers will need to be upskilled, reskilled, et cetera, right? Due to automation, look at what's happening now that we have these large language models with AI. So as that pace continues to happen, I think what you're doing, what you're talking about, we term it micro-credentials, short-term credentials, whatever language you like to use. That's just going to continue to having those on and off ramps that you're describing are going to become more and more and more important in post-secondary education. Because it's no longer going to be that your bachelor's degree in psychology is going to carry you through your career anymore, right? So as we see this happening, we are doing the same. I think colleges and universities are doing some level or some format of kind of trying to unbundle. I always say chunk. That's my my very professional word. But chunking of the curriculum. Yes, very strategic chunking. Working with our industry partners, right? So we really are kind of always trying to work through how do we get back to being lockstep with our industry partners? How can we in higher education, and that's where again some of these alternative models can be a little more agile, move a little quicker, so that we can meet those needs, so we don't have to have every Apple company, every other company building all of their own training and learning, that we can continue to partner together and fill that function as things are changing, staying lockstep. But I do want to put a shout out that it's always important, at least today it's still very important, that these on and off ramps, these short-term credentials are always stacking, as you said, Chris, because we know that degree, that credentialing still matters in the job market. We can get into some of those stats, but go ahead.
No,
I'm ready to go.
This is a really important thing for us in catalyzing this conversation within the community. It's really important for us to understand there's two drives. One is, you know, I was at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. When Warren Buffett came in, he funded a big anti-poverty initiative, which actually founded the post-secondary initiative, because they spent millions of dollars analyzing poverty dynamics in the US, and one of the things they found out is the biggest disintermediator of the intergenerational transmission of poverty turned out to be a post-secondary credential with labor market value.
Yep.
The problem is post-secondary credential with labor market value doesn't fit on a bumper sticker, right? It is a long, complex, because everyone thought that meant a 4-year degree. It does not mean a 4-year degree. It means badges, certifications, associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, and more. And the first battle was credibilizing the family of post-secondary credentials. Yeah. And what's interesting is I think there are some folks in the field who fetishize the non-degree side and think that that's all those folks need. In truth, what we've actually found is the beautiful thing is if you welcome the family of post-secondary credentials that carry labor market value, labor market signal. Yeah. but you stack and sync them into degree pathways, and you really help low-income first-generation folks because they can survive and thrive as they stay on that pathway.
Yep.
So this is important for all of us. It's like, this is not an either-or conversation. You don't have to be in the degree camp or the micro-credential, sub-credential, whatever you want to call it. We've got to be in an and conversation here, and we've got to forcefully think about how we sync and link these things. Not everybody has to get a degree, but I argue everyone, if the credentials you're getting should stack and sync into degrees in some ways. Chris, you've been leading this work at National across all of our 150 plus programs. You've met with every program director to talk about what are the curated family of credentials that would work for them that they can build into their degrees. This is a conversation that's not easy to catalyze, but we got to be willing to have it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say one of the things with our faculty is I think they really have an appetite. I think it's part of the founding for non-traditional working and military students is partnering with industry. For one, it makes sense for us in a lot of cases to have content that's relevant, that's up to date. I mean, using the Swift programming and embedding that into our content. If there's going to be an update with Swift, it's going to happen with Apple, and so our students have access to that content right away. So our faculty are really positive about these types of partnerships, and also they see the relevance with the certifications and what we're currently teaching in our degree programs there, which makes the prior learning conversation so much easier.
Kate, this is important because one of the things you talk about a lot is this also means we have to translate with the employers, because sometimes the CEO is really excited about non-degree, but the head of HR is not.
Yeah, in fact, I was just reading a study that LinkedIn did about kind of cataloging the postings and how we have seen growth in degreeless job postings across the board from 2019 to 22. I think it went from 21% up to 29%. So there's movement. Recruiters out there are starting to recruit differently, but what we're not seeing is then at the company level that it's not as rapid changing of hiring people without those degrees. And so our experience has been, you know, we go to the table with our industry partners, this is what we want, but then the job gets posted with the same old degree in it. And so it's really, we're in that transition. I think we're hitting that moment right now, as you were saying in your opening, Mark, that we are finding our way through with our partners in this moment about how do we make this transition, because we recognize that the skills are going to keep changing at such a rapid pace. So we know that we can get better at defining what those skills are, working together, but bringing the HR team in so that they are a part of that conversation from the beginning.
And part of this dialogue is going to be, and again, this is where we have to create a policy and practice infrastructure. So a good example, super supportive of Workforce Pell. I know what people are trying to get at with Workforce Pell. I'm a bigger proponent of, instead of doing that, we should have changed the language in Pell to stop saying degree seeking, because I would argue there's a whole bunch of students who say they're degree seeking who are not degree seeking, who are coming there to spend because they need to access Pell. I would argue let's define learning as if it's on a degree pathway. If that training, if that certification, if that can show that it's actually can be articulated into a degree program that is Pell eligible, degree pathway learning is what we should be using the Pell for. And that way you end up with a whole family of degrees coming in. That's the kind of conversation we can have, which helps us think about the kind of funding that goes around this. But then, Todd, I want to bring you in, because this also means the employers have to understand how, like, the value of skills-based hiring and credential-based hiring. Tell me how that conversation is playing out at Apple.
Yeah, I think I've been at Apple, I don't know, going on 12 years, so I've seen certainly some evolution. I think a piece of that is definitely kind of as part of our corporate inclusion and diversity efforts, trying to make sure that, you know, our organization really represents the communities where we live and work.
Yeah, that way you can get diverse people on these higher ed pathways.
That's right. And then I think now there are certainly some roles that do require
100%.
you to have a PhD in computer science or something like that. But I think we're finding more and more that when we can kind of cast a more broad net and bring more people into the dialogue, and that dialogue being, you know, employment opportunities and that sort of thing, you find people that have some really unique skills. I was having dinner with some Kale folks last evening, and we were talking specifically about this piece around, the degree isn't always the most important thing, really looking, and honestly, on the hiring side, someone like myself needs to definitely have a very open mind around the fact that there's some skills that I can definitely teach. There are some things that if a person doesn't have it, you're probably never really going to get them up to speed with. And so I think that's really where this model has changed. And I think also then if we take it to sort of the manufacturing environment, yes, once again, you do have some very specific needs from a degree basis related to maybe technology or management or something. But there's so many roles, and I think you see this particularly in many places around the world. Places in the EU, like Germany, is sort of famous for this focus on vocational education as opposed to 4 years degree. The UK, many other European countries, and I think many more countries across Asia are also really following and seeing the value in this vocational skills development, which is what we're really trying to provide, which really not only allows for, sort of a solid foundation to operate, manufacturing, for instance, but then to really provide a development path that is probably different and unique than that person who gets a 4-year degree and thinks, oh, then I have to get a master's or then I have to get a PhD. I think these sort of, micro certificates or these sort of this really kind of lifelong learning path that really grows and
the way things are changing, what we're seeing is more and more people don't need on-ramps, they need off-ramps. So getting a bachelor's degree, getting another cert on top of that opens up all kinds of doors. Yeah. So it's the continuing learning model within this. But this is where, like, us getting creative about how this plays out and the language around this, the degree pathway language where we can really talk about a both and with certifications and degrees is super important because it gets us out of the class warfare. It's not low-income people get certs and high-income people get degrees. This is like everyone can get on a degree pathway. Different ways, different paths to the top of the mountain, but anybody can kind of get there. Let's get concrete about this. So, Kate, talk a bit. CHIPS has been a big deal. The CHIPS Act has been a really big deal, Maricopa County in particular. Yes. You all have been responding to that and working in partnership with university partners and K-12 partners. Talk a bit about how you're tackling that challenge in particular.
Absolutely. Can I do one caveat first? Yeah. I just want to also point out, as part of this conversation, the integral work that's happening at post-secondary institutions around the country, addressing that population of whether it's the 16 to 24-year-old population that we know doesn't have a high school equivalency, is not enrolled, whether it's our adult learners who don't have that high school equivalency, and the work that's being done that I think is really critical to the workforce shortage we have. And I know there's some people from Rio here, so if I get my numbers wrong, just shout them out so I get them right. But I think across Arizona, we have 700,000 adults who don't have their high school equivalency. And what we're doing, and I know programs across the country are really focused on, is that as you're doing your high school equivalency, you're also being co-enrolled in credit-bearing degree pathways. Right. And even though it's not the goal to get a full degree by the end of that, by the time you get your high school equivalency, then you also have some type of certificate that leads to a higher wage income job. And that is transformational. That is life-changing, and that's going to meet some of those shortages. Mm-hmm. And that's a really important part of that of this path that we're talking about.
The social mobility path.
Yes, it's the social mobility, and it's meeting the workforce needs across this country, and then lets them come back and get another certificate, right, that then builds to that degree, and then becoming an engineer, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so back to CHIPS. Sorry, I just didn't want to leave that part of that picture out.
That was a great detour, I love it.
So, it's a really fundamentally important piece, and I love the work that's going on in that space across the country. CHIPS, woo, billions and billions of dollars. going to bringing back onshoring all of the whole pipeline part of building semiconductors, as well as the actual manufacturing, et cetera. Across, really in the Phoenix area, I want to give a shout out to the leadership of our Commerce Authority, et cetera, who's done an incredible job of really bringing together industry and higher education to address where we need to grow our workforce. With that, we're doing the same types of things. Again, looking at how do we take our semiconductor 2-year degree, and we've been chunking it. What do you say? Unbundling it.
I like chunk. Go with chunk.
Okay, strategically chunking it, working with Taiwan Semiconductor, Intel, all the big ones, right? And the ones that are closer to us in terms of what gets somebody into that technician role. What is it they need to get started? We're right now running a program for veterans, funded from the National Science Foundation, where they can enroll. It's no cost to them. We do it in a 12-week program. They basically complete the equivalent of 18 credits. They go full-time. Their starting salary at the end of that is anywhere in the Phoenix area. It's between $54,000 and $83,000 a year.
Nice.
That is a 12-week program. Again, meeting that need, getting people into the workforce. I didn't really talk about how we've tackled the CHIPS funding and really building this as a community.
But that CHIPS funding has catalyzed this process.
Yes, absolutely. And we know we need to grow. For every engineer, you need 7 technicians, right? And so putting people, getting them into those technician roles, and then they can come back and do, what National is doing with, then they get an on-ramp here, and then they become that engineer down
So
the road.
Medi-Cal and the work with behavioral health technicians has kind of led to the same thing for National.
Yes.
Chris, you might want to talk about that a bit, because the whole need for behavioral health technicians in the mental health
Yep.
crisis, like suddenly the same thing. You can build a certification into a degree. Talk a bit about that.
Absolutely. And in California and across the country, there's a real shortage of mental health workers. And so one of the things that we're rolling out is a ladder where people can come in and start as a peer support specialist. And then as they move up, where they get a BA in psychology, they're able to become a behavioral analyst, move up, get a master's of family therapy or master's of counseling, all the way up to doctoral, where they could be a clinical psychologist there. But with us, especially in California with the behavioral analysis, it's a one-to-one treatment from specialist to patient there. And I think there's 750,000 autism cases in California alone. And so there's a big shortage that we're really working with a lot of our agency partners on just trying to find those steps to get more people into that profession.
Todd, as you're thinking about this, obviously, you work with the whole family of education players out there. Apple's famously been connected to K-12 for a long time. You obviously work with very traditional institutions, but also the non-traditionals across the board. You really are pretty expansive. And part of that's because you do have the multiple tracks of your own employee folks, but then the employees of all the folks that you're trying to serve in this regard. Yeah. What do you see on the road ahead for Apple in terms of the continued kind of catalytic work in the world of education? Because clearly you've been a voice for that for a long time.
Yeah, really, if you look at some of the first things we did with the first computers that we developed, so many years ago, it was very focused on schools. My father-in-law is a teacher, and I remember, him talking about, the programs he had to be able to bring technology into the classroom for the very first time, and how that really just transformed his learning environment that he'd been in for so many years before that. I think it's really continuing that. I think we certainly see, and there are so many different sessions this week, AI, I think probably popped up several times a day during different sessions. Certainly, I think it's on everyone's sort of lips. I think, even when I think about where I started as a student and the way I sort of experienced and, met technology, obviously very different than, our children do today, students do today, and it's going to be even more so going forward. I think, so there's the opportunity to either, maybe not be sure of it or distrust it, or really kind of learn more about it and embrace it. And I think really,
So part of that is you helping catalyze employees and folks you're working with. Your people are going to have to continue to learn. And there are lots of ways to do it. Here is a family of ways to do it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is even just from the programming that we do. If I think back, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe our programs were training and teaching maybe 25,000 people every year. We're now, training and teaching several 100,000 people a year. Some of our programs will train, some of our new employee orientation health training will train more than 1 million people per year on basic health and wellness. But we have to, in order to do that, we have to utilize technology.
Yeah.
We really have set up sort of this, we don't have them so much in the United States anymore, but abroad you have these teachers' colleges where, students go to learn to become a teacher, then they go to, universities or primary schools or what have you. And we've really set up our model, very similar to that, where we're training trainers and teachers at supplier sites in most cases, who are then turning around and training, tens of thousands or maybe in some cases hundreds of thousands of people on different topics. But without technology, it'd be impossible to do that because we only have so many people, which is why we weren't being able to reach as many needs, just a few years ago when you have a small staff and they have to physically go to a place to gather a group like this, you don't have the resources.
We really do have a moment here to help more and more diverse people be more successful in higher education pathways, but especially in opening doors for their own personal efficacy, professional opportunities. Like, this really is a moment because we've got policymakers listening, we have the technology infrastructure emerging. I'd love just to hear what you're most excited about in this work. If we're going to start really championing these models for non-traditional working and military students, what has you super excited about on the road ahead? Chris, I'm going to kick you off.
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I'm going to use the word chunking, is
It's going to be in the literature soon.
Exactly.
is that with our students and our working students, and many of them, as you know, are working 2 jobs. They have families, they have parents, they've got a lot of different sort of challenges to work and study at the same time, is every 15 minutes matters for our students. And so how do we start chunking out content so we make it available and accessible, so if somebody is on their way to work or if somebody is at their kid's soccer practice, they can find that 30 minutes of content and be able to work through their program as we go. And we're starting to see a little bit about that, but I think in terms of the access and to make it possible for people to do that, I think the chunking is going to be a big opportunity for us going ahead and making the
They're
content.
stealing of time to study, right?
Exactly.
As they're doing it. I'd love for you to unpack one thing that you're working with in particular, is this idea of the healthy learning centers, because students don't necessarily want to go to class, but they actually do want to be in places where they see other people like them. Talk a bit about what you're doing with that.
Yeah, so most of our students, they're all non-traditional working military students. Most of them are working full-time, but they don't necessarily have a third place or a safe place to study. Many times they can't do their coursework at work, they can't do it at home. They have kids, parents, roommates, a digital divide. And so what we're looking is we reimagine spaces. How do we set ourselves up so we can better serve our students? And it's not necessarily with our physical spaces, just running classrooms, but how do you provide wraparound student support? How do you provide the writing coaches where they can come in and everything student facing is right there? And then really one thing we're hearing louder and louder is childcare. How do we provide childcare to our students so that they can come, they can take their courses, they can do their studying there? So we're partnering with the YMCAs and our certain physical locations so that we're actually able to get the childcare for our students. And then additionally with our physical spaces, and probably with Maricopa, they're seeing a similar thing, is students aren't necessarily using all the physical space the same way. In many cases, sometimes they're not using the physical classrooms anymore, but they need other kind of spaces, ways to provide programs for their students. And so what we're looking to do is potentially even lock arms with some of our community college partners to see how can we provide service and access to our students in some of those other regions.
So
there.
instead of a We Work site, it's a We Learn site.
Exactly.
Right, with childcare.
Yeah.
Right, so you end up doing the part, which is, again, with 70% females coming through our programs, that becomes a really big deal. Kate, how about you?
What I'm excited about?
Yeah.
Everything.
We could tell.
I think in this moment, I'm really excited about the concept that we might have more and greater breakthrough that post-secondary learning is for you being literally every person.
Yeah.
And that I loved your opening, Mark, and kind of removing that, that we have an opportunity right now, and I think we're starting down that path where it's
the
becoming,
you belong message.
Yeah, and it's becoming more of the norm that, hey, my friend started college while he was in prison, and now he's getting his master's degree and he's doing all of this stuff, right? And it's like, wow, like this is, maybe I can do this. Wow, my neighbor with 4 kids works 2 jobs. She's actually able to, so I think that we're at that cusp with the technology advancements that are coming, that I think we're going to be able to break through more and more of some of the stereotypes that people, and the I can't moments, and build more and more of the I can as more of the non-traditional pathways in education become the norm, which is really, I think, what's happening. So I really look forward to that continued unlocking of the higher education, the post-secondary education that makes the difference not only for that individual, for their families, and then we all know that makes all the difference for the community.
No, I love it.
Yeah, I think the long-term goal is providing opportunity to whoever we're engaged with. I think one of the things I'm probably most excited about is a program that we started 2 years ago now, vocational education for persons with disabilities. I'm a parent of a child with a severe disability, and just as our family, my wife and I, talking about sort of what does his future look like. Of course, we have a lot of questions. We don't know what that's going to look like. And a couple of years ago, I was at a factory in Asia that was talking about a program they had to hire and provide opportunity to the disabled community. And I kind of looked at what they were doing, and it wasn't really a program per se, but it really got me thinking about the fact that my team had relationships with quite a lot of vocational institutes. I made the foolish assumption that one of those institutes would surely have had a program to provide training and upskilling, and then connect persons with disabilities to employment opportunities. We actually found no institute across Asia that was doing that sort of thing to a significant level.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of small things, but so we decided to kind of take it upon ourselves to develop a program like that. And the program's grown from just a handful of people with disabilities who'd been hired over just a few factories to over 50 factories across 3 countries in Asia. About over 8,500 people with disabilities have gained employment through that program. And we're expanding that in Europe and in North America this year. And I mean, really the point isn't so much, I mean, that program, I think, is really transforming not only the lives of those individuals, but in many cases, their families. I mean, I can speak for myself. If and when my son has an opportunity like that, I just, be over the moon, And I think that's really done that. But I think more so is the work we're doing through programs like that. We have another program called the Apple Impact Accelerator. We're really focusing on underserved communities to help them either develop or grow current business ideas, and then see how can we connect them to access either to our own supply chain or to the procurement departments of our suppliers, and how can we take some of sort of our size and influence and really, make it matter well beyond just providing, great technology that people can use every day.
Oh, I love it.
Can I just add one other thing? I'm excited.
You're so excited.
I am. It's amazing what we can all do together. I'm also excited about the emerging technologies. AI has been around since the 50s. That's when the term was introduced in 56, right? But it's overhyped and under-delivered on that hype, and now that's all changing for us with these large language models, right? So what I'm really excited about is we know that our students, the biggest uptick in when they're studying, when they're accessing their courses is between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. And so the idea that what these technologies can do in providing more and more of that wraparound support, I mean, I know digital twins can freak us out, but how can they also be used to support a student in real time at midnight, right, to get the support, get their questions answered, et cetera, that will help them continue to go. So I think there's some incredible, there's things to be nervous about and cautious about, but there's incredible potential for how we support all learners with greater success.
No, if we can get the right resource to the right student at the right
Right
time in the right way,
Amen.
leveraging the right analytics, I mean, that's where you can create that wraparound of not just support, but actual learning tools, which is where it gets really exciting. Folks, this is a powerful moment in the world of higher education. At National University, this might be a little goofy, but we begin every major meeting at the university with a review of our mission and vision and our ways of work. Our ways of work are something we've built across the entire university. We've asked everybody, at our best, if we were doing our best work, what would we look like, what would we be doing? And that has become our ways of work. And our ways of work are, if people looked at National, they would see us championing student success, building trust, advancing inclusion, embracing accountability. And our fifth one, which is kind of our favorite one, is make things better. And the make things better category is kind of replaces the traditional innovation category that people have. And we did that because make things better can be a big innovation that changes everything for a lot of folks, but it also can be the smallest little thing in the right moment. It can be picking up trash in the parking lot, fixing a drop-down menu, or just taking a beat and helping that student in that moment. That making things better can be a small move or a gigantic move. I would argue we've got a moment to make things a lot better for a lot of students. And the great news for us is we've got leaders like this helping us lead the charge. Let's give them a big round of applause. And with that, the final session of Kale is adjourned. We'll ask Christine to kind of come on back, and we will take our lead. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much. What an incredible panel and discussion. And I think I have a favorite word that I'm going to bring back to Kale. We have micro courses and we say bite-sized. It's officially chunked out now. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you, Kate. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeannie McCarran. I'm Vice President of Member Engagement. How about another round of applause for these exceptional individuals, Mark, Chris, Kate, and Todd. Amazing isn't a strong enough word, so I'll just say thank you. What a great way to close out Kale's 50th annual conference, addressing issues that will be of the utmost importance as we get set to tackle the next half of the century. With that in mind, let's take a look at all we have accomplished this week and get a glimpse of what's to come in 2025. hope now you understand why there are rubber ducks on the tables. If you have a question about that, you can ask my colleague Matt, who actually spearheaded the thinking around this. Thank you, Matt. Tremendous. We can't wait to welcome you to the home of the blues, the birthplace of rock and roll, and the hotel of some very famous ducks at the Peabody in Memphis in 2025. Yes, so excited. But before we roll on to Memphis, I want to reiterate the immense gratitude to all of us the immense gratitude all of us at Cale have for all who made this conference possible, especially our members. Although, given my role at Cale, I admit I am a little biased, maybe a little. Still, without them, there wouldn't have been anything for us to recap in that video. Thank you, members. We love you. The same can be said of all of our conference supporters, whether you're a member, a strategic partner, a sponsor, or maybe all of the above. And I know some of you are in that category. You made this week possible. Now I'd like to invite my incredible friend and coworker, Ebeth, to acknowledge some of them as well.
Thank you, Jeannie, and hello, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Brandis. I'm Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Cale. It's great to have you all here with us, and I want to join Jeannie in thanking all of our members for making this and all that Cale does really possible. After all, we are a membership organization, so it's incredible what you all do for us. Our conference, of course, also depends on the generous support of our sponsors. And this year, we are thankful for the contributions of all of our sponsors, including our gold anniversary sponsors, AARP and Walmart, our diamond sponsors, Inside Track, Ease Learning, and National University. Yeah. And our platinum sponsors, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, Z-Space, Education at Work, the McDonald's Corporation, and Reach Collaborative. So thank you. And of course, our thanks also to everyone in this room. Your presence here has made this 2024 anniversary 50-year conference for Cale actually our most successful conference event to date. So give yourselves a round of applause. And I want to also say that Jeannie and I are very grateful to our two fellow Cale employees, especially Elizabeth Warner and Brooke Pierman. There they are up here. You guys want to stand? They've been standing all week, right? So they really do make this event happen, so we really want to thank them. And Jeannie and I have always been joking that every year, as soon as this conference ends, the next one starts. And the work on that has actually already started, so that is true. The team is really hard at work getting everything ready to welcome us and all of you to Memphis just 375 days from today. So please mark your calendars. I'm sure you can put a reminder on there. And in the meantime, please continue to stay in touch, engage with us, our members on Cale Connect. We're there for you there. Social media, or email any of us anytime you'd like to discuss how we can further collaborate or better meet your needs. And I also want to wish all of you safe travels back wherever home is. And just a reminder, don't go just yet, because Elizabeth is going to come up here. Elizabeth Warner, she's going to handle everybody's favorite part of this final day rally. She has your prize giveaways, so thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ebeth and Jeannie. That was very kind. The lovely Brooke is up here to conduct the proceedings. I hope you're all holding your tickets, ready to go, watching your numbers. So we just learned about Memphis, so let's start with seeing who is going to win a free registration to next year's conference in Memphis. And also it comes with a little goodie bag that's got a Yeti in it, so I'm a little jealous. Okay. 496579. Oh, I heard disappointment, but do we have a winner? Okay, one more time. 496-579. Okay, we'll try again. We'll try again. Okay, ready? Ready? 496-638. Woo! Okay. Brooke is running it over. Okay, awesome. Enjoy. See you next year. Not too far away. Okay, so next we're going to do the Amazon gift cards. And we've got a winner of the mobile app game. So hopefully we've got these folks in the audience. Is Annette Eldridge here? She is. Wonderful. Okay. All right, Annette, we've got you. Annette's holding her hand. Brooke's our runner. Thank you, Brooke. And congratulations, Annette. And before I forget, I don't want to neglect our virtual audience, which stays strong. We're so happy they're with us. We're also going to be doing a drawing for a free virtual registration for next year. So if you're attending virtually, keep an eye on your email. You'll see one come through. So thank you all for being here. Another gift card that we're going to draw from here is for a $100 Amazon gift card. All right, so let's see what we get. 496-655. Yay, okay. In the back, stand up, hold your hand up high. We're coming to you. Okay. And I think I'm going to handle this last one on my own, if I can do it. All right. So the last thing that we've got is kind of fun. It's a moleskin notebook, but you can take notes in it, and then it goes onto your computer. That's about as techie an explanation as I am willing to give. My colleague wrote me a script that sounds much more knowledgeable, but it won't sound real coming from me. So 496-564. Are you hitting? Yeah, okay. All right. All right. And with that wraps us up. Thank you so much for being here. Safe travels home.
Long distance information, give me Memphis, Tennessee. Help me find the party, try to get in touch with me. She could not leave her number, but I know who placed the call. 'Cause my uncle took the message and he wrote it on the wall. Help me information, get in touch with my Marie. She's the only one who'd phone me here from Memphis, Tennessee. Her home is on the south side, high up on a ridge, just a half a mile from the Mississippi Bridge. Help me information, more than that I cannot add. Only that I miss her and all the fun we had. But we were pulled apart because her mom did not agree, and tore apart our happy home in Memphis, Tennessee. Last time I saw Marie, she's waving me goodbye, with hurry home drops on her cheek that trickle from her eye. Marie is only 6 years old. Information, please. Try to put me through to her in Memphis, Tennessee.
dedicate this song to little Junior Parker, a cousin of mine that's gone on, but we'd like to